Have you ever felt stuck in your growth journey, wondering how to build resilience in the face of challenges?
Or maybe you're looking to shift your mindset and unlock your full potential.
Well, if you said yes, then you are in the right place.
Welcome to the Stretch Zone. I'm Hannah.
And I am Feds.
And here we explore self-development, nurture resilience, and embrace the mindset shifts that help you grow beyond your limits.
Welcome back to the Stretch Zone. How are we today, Hannah?
Hi, Feds. I'm really well, thank you. I'm really well. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a bit tired. It's been a long week. I'm packing everything, sold my car. The weather here is not getting any better, but it's okay. It's okay. I guess just winter is coming and I'm feeling it.
Yeah,
I just want to
absolutely.
sleep all day.
Oh my goodness, I know. I feel exactly the same, apart from I'm about a month behind you with regards to moving. I'm not moving overseas, it's only interstate, but yeah, I move about a month later than you do, and I get it. It just feels like a never-ending task list. That's pretty big once you've sold the car, though.
I'm
Congratulations.
feeling very happy.
It's
Yeah,
kind
I
of
feel
a
like
good thing and a bad thing all at once.
exactly. No, I feel like the biggest thing, my biggest issue was what if I don't find someone? But no, I'm fine. It's all good.
Eh,
Yeah, I guess one of the reasons why I'm reacting the way I'm reacting is also connected to what we're going to talk about today, which
Yeah.
is resilience. So, how can we build resilience in uncertain times?
This is a
So,
really great subject and one of my favorites, actually. So I'm
yeah,
really excited about today's podcast.
yes, it's going to be fun. And we're going to give you a little bit of a definition, a little bit of science, a little bit of personal experience. And then we're going to try and give you some tips as well. Hopefully,
Yep.
that would be helpful for you guys.
Yes.
So let's begin with a little bit of a definition. What could you tell about this, Hannah?
Well, resilience itself, if you are kind of looking this up, resilience is about the ability to adapt and to bounce back when things don't go as planned. It's not about avoiding stress and hardships, but it's rather about really being able to learn and to manage it in a much more healthy and productive way. And I think when people might think about resilience, there could be an image of being really rock solid and never being knocked down. Really kind of like, I don't know, but I get the feeling that some people might think resilience is about being really stoic. And I think for what I've just told you in those words, I think it's really about that bounce back. So we get knocked down in life, things happen, bad things happen, but really it's about how do we then deal with that coming back up, walking forwards, being able to stand back up. And I just wanted to slightly digress here quite early on, if you don't mind. I've been listening to Brene Brown's book about rising strong, and it's all about resilience, and so felt really relevant. And I actually wrote down a quote that I really loved and felt could be, I guess I'm throwing in a little tip really early on here, so I apologize. I've gone a little bit off piste, but this is what she says. She says, resilience is based on compassion for ourselves as well as compassion for others. And it's also based on lots of other things, but I love that there's like a little tip in there that if we can create compassion in those moments of down in the pit, then maybe there's room for us to be able to move forwards. And we'll talk a bit more about that further on, but I like to think about that quite early on when it comes to resilience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is definitely a different concept compared to strength or resistance in general. Like I actually have this like this is my linguistic background that kicks in, but I've had this conversation a couple of times with some of my Italian friends, and there is a translation for the word resilience, but um, my understanding is that is relatively new in the language. And so it's not really, it hasn't really been used before. And many people have this idea that resilience is just being soft and just adapt to everything without making any kind of effort. Um, but that's not really the case. So the point of resilience is, the really meaning of resilience is also the flexibility, being
Yeah,
able to be flexible and in some ways, yes, adapt, but showing strength and showing the tenacity to
yeah,
move forward and doing something about what we want to do. So it's a different idea compared to strength. It's a different idea compared to, it gives me like a bit more of a flexible idea when it comes to our actions rather than a rigid approach. Something that is like can be described as strong, normally it's also connected to a more rigid, sturdy, as you mentioned, more stoic view
yeah,
of our reaction, but
yeah.
resilience is not.
No, absolutely not.
So
Flexibility is
hopefully,
key.
yeah, exactly. So hopefully, I really hope that my Italian friends will finally understand the real meaning of the word resilience.
Yeah. Interesting.
But fingers crossed.
Yeah, that's really interesting. What do you know
Mhm.
about the science behind resilience?
So okay, so the very first thing that I would like to mention is Carol Dweck's work, which is something that I love. And because, of course, it's related to mindset and growth mindset and fixed mindset. So and we're going to talk about this more in specific like focus, but the idea of growth mindset is connected with resilience in the sense that when we nurture a growth mindset, we have really the idea that we can improve, we can become better. We are not fixed in a state, but we can grow, we can nurture our qualities, nurture our skills. There's no limit to what we can achieve. And so, based on this idea, automatically anything that comes our way is not a challenge anymore, but is an opportunity. And that is what helps us build resilience, because whatever comes your way, you don't see it as, oh my God, why is this happening? You would
Yeah,
see it as, okay, this is happening. How can I grow from this? And
yeah,
so this whole idea helps you bounce back. Now, a very important part of resilience is that, of course, we all go through hard times. We
yeah,
all go through challenges, but that's one of the main points. So there are a couple of theories, and I'm not an academic. I am definitely not a scientist, but I like to read about these things. So I've read about the stress inoculation theory and resilience theory. So, how do we actually work on resilience? And inevitably, if you want to build up your resilience a little bit, you have to face challenges. We need to stretch our comfort zone.
yeah,
So, both theories discuss the fact that we need to be stressed. We need to put ourselves out there. We need to have like little moments of challenge, of stress, so that we can build up our resilience. We can become used to facing these moments. So in my case, specifically what's happening this week, because it's
yeah,
not my first rodeo, it's not the first time that I'm moving to another country. I have built up this resilience. So I know I've been exposed to this kind of stress before. And so, of course, it's easier for me. And when I say stress, of course, we're talking about small doses, small manageable doses of
yeah.
stress, not impossible challenges that feel huge and unrealistic.
Yeah, that's really interesting because the word stress itself can already make my body go, "Oh no, I'm against stress." But actually you're so right. Little doses of stress create that what we are talking about, stretch zone, that capacity to hopefully take on more challenge. And we're not saying that our whole life should just be full of stress. There are different measures of stress in our life and in the world. Um, but it's about stepping stones, isn't it? It's about taking on little bites and seeing
Mhm.
how you manage that. And that's
Mhm.
really how we can sort of grow as a human in every scenario, isn't it? And going
Yeah.
out of our comfort zone is where the growth zone happens. And unfortunately, that there's we almost need to have a different word, because I do feel like stress is this very negative type of word that's out there. But if we could, I can't think right now of a word that's similar to stress, but doesn't necessarily mean that you need to give up on life, or quit your job, or quit certain scenarios so that you're not stressed. I'm trying to think of a similar word, but not exactly the word stress. But
I mean, the positive connotation would be the challenges.
yeah,
Someone who is experienced challenges. Then, of course, it has more of a positive connotation.
yeah,
So we do tend to attach a negative meaning to the word stress. In terms of what we are talking about, like when we talk about stressors, is anything that creates a little bit of a challenge for us, something that is unknown, something that is different, something that requires us to think out of the box,
yeah,
doing things differently, reacting differently.
yeah,
So anything could become a stressor. Anything that
sure,
is that alters our normal balance could be a stressor. But as long as it's manageable, as
yeah,
long as we know, like selling my car, it was actually easier than I thought, but I was actually pretty stressed at the beginning because I was
yeah. It
like,
is. It's
what if I
stressful.
can't find anyone? What if I
Yeah,
find someone who wants to trick me? What if I find someone
yeah,
who's not an honest person? Like I had all of these ideas, but it was manageable stress. It was stress that I had to experience to be able to grow and learn that it's okay.
yeah,
There was the possibility that things could go wrong, but they didn't. I'm fine. Everything went well. I'm very happy, and it is just part of life. But
absolutely.
some people tend to avoid these kind of moments because
It's
it's not.
uncomfortable.
It's not, of
It's
course. Yeah,
uncomfortable. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, these uncomfortable moments is what really makes you builds up your resilience.
yeah, 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 definitely. So, can you remember a time, Feds, where you've really had to kick in some bouncing back in your time? When have you looked back in your life and thought, yeah, I I am resilient?
I think the best example for me is when I first moved to London.
Okay.
So I'm Italian, born and bred, grew up in Italy in a relatively small town. Um, I didn't really fit in. Funny because I'm going back there, so that's going to be an interesting one. But I didn't really feel like that was enough for me back then, and so I had been to London before. I've always loved London. I clearly love the language. So I thought, you know what, let's go. And at the time, it was something quite fashionable as well. I had a few friends who actually moved abroad. So I was like looking at their pictures on Facebook. They were telling stories. And I was like, I want to do this. I want to see how it feels. There are, of course, other motivations, but this is a little part of why I did it. What I didn't know was what would have happened once moved to London. So I get there. I was lucky enough to have an accommodation straight away. I was traveling with a friend, so I wasn't even alone back then. So the first month was okay. Um, Probably the biggest problem I had was the language because I had always thought that my English was amazing. I always had great grades at school. And then I moved to London and I realized that actually my English was pretty crap. What I studied at school didn't really help me with what I wanted to do. I couldn't find really a job in an office because simply my English wasn't good enough. I just didn't have the experience as well. So that was the very first reality check that I had It was like a
Mm.
low blow to my confidence, and I was like, all right, okay, this is not going as I thought it would be. Everything was freaking expensive. Never managed my finances before because I was 20 years old, so I was just becoming an adult. Really started working and actually having to pay for the rent, pay for everything. So I had to find a job. Distances were huge. Like to me, I grew up in a small town, so the idea of having to be on a bus for 1 hour and 45 minutes to go to work, it was just unheard of. So there were just like little things that really destabilized me in
Yeah,
that
sure.
sense, you know? And that was really tricky. And then it got worse from that.
What
Um,
happened next?
so I found the job in Cafe Nero, of course, because that's where
Yeah.
Italian. And I had to find a new apartment where to live. So I rented an apartment with a friend. And when I moved in, I actually realized that it hadn't been a great idea for me to move in
Okay.
with this person. We were very different. I'm a bit of a cleaning freak. She was a bit more of a hippie. And there's like, we had a lot of clashes when it comes to this. And as soon as we moved into the other apartment, I got scabies. And for those of you who don't know what scabies is,
No.
it's a skin condition. And yeah,
I
it's not
thought
really.
that only happened if you lived on a boat like 200 years ago.
Oh man, no. So like scabies is like dust mites.
Yeah.
They yeah, basically they lay eggs under your skin. It's something horrible. I don't want to be too graphic, but yeah.
Goodness me.
So, I just had to like of course I couldn't go to work. I had to go to the hospital, get a treatment, get the entire home called the pest control so that they could remove the dust mites. So all of this with no money, trying to figure out how to speak English,
Yeah.
trying to live with a flatmate that clearly didn't have the same idea of cleanliness that I had. So there were like a lot of different things that I reached. This was at Christmas. So this happened really at Christmas. So I remember being at home on Christmas Day with a couple of other friends. It ended up being a nice day, but like there was a moment when I actually asked myself, what am I doing here? Why
Yeah.
am I here? Like, why I left a perfectly acceptable job, my family, my friends, my house, my everything. Why am I here?
Can you
And
remember any big feelings that you had at that time? What were some of those feelings?
I felt frustrated because I
Okay.
couldn't express myself as well as I
Yeah.
thought I could. That was a
Yeah.
big thing for me. And that's also probably why I work with languages and communication now. I
Interesting.
felt helpless because I didn't have friends, I didn't have family, I didn't have anyone who could actually help me. I didn't have any contacts. I didn't know how the system worked. Even just like small things like signing up for a doctor, going and get a prescription,
Yeah.
everything was different to what
Yeah.
was my known comfort zone. And so I guess what I did was instead of stretching my comfort zone, I literally jumped out of it a million miles away. And so I ended up in a sort of panic zone.
Yeah. Okay.
And so yeah, frustration and in general like I was very disappointed at myself because I thought I wasn't able to make it, to just
Wow.
do what I wanted to do.
So incredible. You felt disappointed and frustrated.
Yeah.
And I can really see that and feel that from what you're saying. I wouldn't have necessarily of picked exactly those feelings or those thoughts from an outsider, but I can totally see how you must have felt like that. And tell me at that point when you realized, hey, I need some change. Um, did you take an act of change, or was it sort of slowly, progressively things changed? How did it? How did you sort of feel like you could move forwards from that point?
um I think I started being a little bit more aware of what I was doing, and I realized that the first couple of months, like 3 months really, because I moved in October and everything started changing in January. I needed to make small steps to fix what were the things that I wasn't okay with. And the biggest thing for me was my work because
Okay.
I needed a job where I could earn a bit more money, learn different skills, work with a more international team. So I ended up working for Pret, which, yes, it's still a sandwich job. So it's not the office job that I wanted, but
Yeah.
it's actually what made all the rest happen because um, I started earning more money, so I was
Mhm.
able to, I mean, a little bit more money.
Yeah.
I was able to afford different things like going out, doing. I took up dance classes again, which was something that I used to do back in Italy. So I had time to, express myself,
Yeah.
have a hobby, and one thing that I started noticing when I was working at Pret was that everyone had at least two jobs, and most of the people were also studying at uni.
Okay.
Like I honestly, I worked with people who I don't know when they slept. I
Yeah.
really don't know. Like they were
That's what I was
amazing.
just thinking.
I
Okay.
don't know. If you ask me, I have no idea, honestly. And they were amazing people. And so I started thinking, if they do it, why can't I do it?
Okay.
And I know that is like probably comparing yourself to others, it's not a great thing. But if you are doing with the intention of growing and you take that as a benchmark for excellence, then it kind of pushes you and say, right, I can do it.
It can be
Why not?
inspiring. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that's also why I went to university. I got my bachelor, then I got my master. So everything trickled down from that moment, really. But I
Wow.
think the moment when I asked myself, why am I doing this?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
That was the turning point.
That's really interesting. So questioning why am I doing what I'm doing for you was what I'm hearing is or was, and maybe it still is an anchor in some
Yeah,
ways for you.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
motivation is very important to build resilience because if you don't have a strong enough motivation, you're just simply not going to have a reason to do something. And
Yeah.
so when I ask myself, why am I here? Why am I enduring all of this
Yeah.
crap that is happening in my life right now?
Yeah.
And of course, I needed to find a bigger motivation rather than it's trendy to live in London. Because
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
cares? When you don't have money to buy food, then it doesn't matter if something is trendy. And
Yeah.
so I actually I started asking myself this question, and I was like, well, I am doing this because I want to be independent. I want to become independent. I want to learn how to be independent. I want to meet people from around the world. I want to go and see museums. I want to like explore this city more. And so all of those things, they actually help me. But what really changed everything was that the first few months were so stressful. Okay,
Yeah.
so the stress was, to be honest, I think I was younger, and so in some ways I was inexperienced. If I had the same issues now, I would just be like, all right, I'm gonna go to the doctor. Let's get a treatment. And I've learned how to manage the stress. I've learned that I have the ability to get over whatever is happening.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have been able to do it without experiencing the stress.
Yeah. Absolutely. I hear that. Well, thank you for sharing about a time that you can look back and hold strength from.
Yeah.
And that's it's a great place to when we think about our own resilience, if we can look back on an experience that was difficult and realize,
Hmm.
hey, we got through that. I think it's
Yeah.
only a positive for us mentally, even if we have a scenario that's completely different, that's right in front of us, I think it's still a really useful first step when it comes to resilience and
Yeah,
building resilience. And maybe that's one of our first sort of tips, really, is to actually just pause in that moment when we're faced with a huge challenge and we're at rock bottom or at the bottom. The first tip from really what you've just been saying is to pause and recognize, oh, okay, actually, like now, because you're in a stressful situation now. Okay, you know what? I've done this before. I can do it again. It feels
yeah.
really stressful what I'm going through, but you know what? I've got strength in the past that I can look back
Mhm.
upon. Um, what other kind of tips do we think that people could take away from this?
I mean, the most important thing for me was building a support network
Yeah, yeah,
because I'm a social person. Like I need to be with people. I've always needed to be with people. I've always worked in contact with people. So I
yeah.
guess what really made everything harder was not having a support network. And I was living with a person that she was amazing, but we were not good flatmates. And it
Mm,
was just like a sum of a lot of different things. I was feeling very lonely.
yeah,
I was feeling very alienated. And so when I started reaching out to people, going also because I couldn't go anywhere when I had scabies. So for like a month, I was literally in my room by myself. I didn't
yeah,
even have the internet at home. This was how
yeah,
bad it was.
yeah.
I had honestly, I had this small radio to play a heart radio 24/7 because it was the only thing I had. So it was so bad.
I was
Um,
about to say, was it before the internet was around? But no, it wasn't.
Yeah, yeah, we're
It
talking. Yeah,
almost
yeah, yeah,
was.
we're talking about like 2009. So no smartphones,
It wasn't.
no
Yeah, it was before
internet.
smartphone.
I
Yeah,
had just moved into a new house, so I didn't have anything. I didn't have a TV. I didn't have the money to buy a TV. So I was literally spending my days listening to hard radio, saved my life. But
I,
then I changed my job. I met new friends. I met new people, and that's really what saved me, honestly.
yeah, I think a support network is so underrated. I think it's the number one thing, and when we're talking about a support network, it doesn't have to be a whole troop of people. Literally, find one person to be that support that you can confide in, that you can just go to, and even if it's not a physical person. And I was having a little
Mhm.
giggle then when you were talking about all you had was heart radio, because I remember when I first moved to Vietnam and I had literally just arrived, and my Mac, one of the first Macs that there used to be, laptops, the charger blew. I'd plugged it into the socket and it blew, and
No.
my laptop was literally my lifeline because I was Skyping. Do you remember Skype? I was
Yeah, yeah.
Skyping
Oh,
with
yeah.
my parents every day, and then all of a sudden I was just cut off from the
Wow.
outside world. And I remember that was probably one of my first almost panic attacks that I'd ever had. And it was that feeling of, oh my goodness, I don't know anybody. I'm
Yeah,
just stuck here. And I had to get out of my room and attempt to figure out how to sort that out. And I remember
yeah,
actually finding someone that
yeah,
did help me. And somehow I managed to buy a new charger a couple of days later. But yeah, it's about finding that one person that can help you. Yeah.
yeah. And I have to say, because we are both expats, so we kind of understand like the expat community is very supportive. And
Very. Yep.
so all the people, even my flatmate, honestly, she was, yes, we may have had like some different ideas of how to live together, but she was so helpful. She was like, in general, like I felt that we all wanted to help each other. And so when I started expanding my network, it felt like a village more than just friends, because they are there for you. Like you become your extended family because they
Totally.
don't have their family, so
Totally. And I guess if you're not in the expat community, again, I just urge you to find that one
mhm.
person, even if it's just someone that you're calling,
Yeah, yeah,
to help you through those really tough times, to help you feel a little stronger.
yeah.
Um, there any other tips? So we've sort of said about our support network. It's about pausing and just recognizing that actually this is tough, and what why am I sort of in this situation? Although it could be a different situation where they haven't actually moved somewhere.
Yeah,
It could be just sort of checking in and realizing that you don't actually have full control over everything in your life.
no,
I think that's a really important sort of thing to think about at times.
yeah, yeah. And I think, like, to me, I started focusing on what I could control, what I was able to control, because I couldn't control the fact that I got scabies. It happened. I couldn't control the fact that my flatmate and I were, we had different opinions. I couldn't control the fact that the system was new.
Yeah.
There were many things that I couldn't control, but then I thought, all right, okay, I need more money, and I
Mm,
don't want to travel 1 hour and 45 minutes every day to go to work because this is just stupid. What can I do? And the first thing that I knew I could control was my job. I know that I can control the job I pick, the work I pick. And so I just found a new job. So if you focus on what you can control, it gives you a different sense of possibility, because you're not just waiting for something to happen. You know that you can take action and something is going to happen.
yeah. And just going back to the first thing that I mentioned at the beginning, Brene Brown, and just trying to bring a bit of compassion in when we've fallen or we're feeling like things are out of our control, just reminding ourselves um, that compassion is a really useful tool to add into the mix, that it isn't our fault. We do a lot of blaming, I think, when
Mhm.
we feel low or something bad has happened,
Mhm.
and that there can be sometimes, and Brene talks about this, there can be quite a lot of shame around when things are difficult, and
Mhm.
and that kind of can override the reality of the situation. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, an important thing to say is that when people think about resilience, they think about, again, they think about strength, they think about something that is rigid. They think
Mm,
about this idea that we all have to be able to do everything by ourselves. That's why we are
yeah,
resilient,
yeah,
because we
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want anything. But that's not the case,
No,
because
no.
we are social animals and we need to
Yep.
be with others. And so
Yeah.
the way I overcame all of these problems, issues, challenges, or however you want to call them, that I had, was because I had a support system. I asked for help. I looked
Yep.
around.
Yeah.
And it's important that we remind that to ourselves every single time we feel that something is overwhelming, or a
Mm,
stressor is unmanageable. And so we feel
yep.
that we can't do it. Or maybe we can't do it alone. But luckily, we are not alone and we don't have to be alone. You know,
Yeah.
in this case, I know how to manage the situation because I have a support system around me. I can ask people.
Yeah.
And that's also how I became more resilient, knowing that I am not alone and I don't have to be.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the first things I try to tackle every time that we move
Mhm.
is try and find one friend as soon as possible.
Yeah,
It's
that's gonna
always
save
top of
you
my
every time.
priority list.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Cool. Do we have any more tips?
Um, no, I sort of feel like
That's enough.
we sort of rounded that up. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that
that's enough. That's
that's all
enough.
good. Yeah.
But of course, if anyone listening has other tips, share your experience. Let us know, because maybe there are some things that you guys are doing that we haven't thought about just yet.
Yeah,
So feel free
absolutely.
to share. Let us know. And
Yeah.
while you do that, you can also answer some of the questions. Now, we like to throw some questions at you at the end of our episode. So, Hannah, what is your question? this week.
Yeah, we would just love to hear what strategies have you guys used to stay resilient during tough times. What about
Definitely.
you, Feds?
I think that having a little bit of self-reflection and think about, is there an area in your life in which you would like to be more resilient?
Mm,
It could be the workplace, it could be family, it could be anything really.
yeah, that's a
Where
great one.
Yeah, so what would more resilience look like in your life?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks
Wonderful.
again, Feds, for your time today. Loved it. Can't wait to meet with you on our next podcast and hope to hear from any of you listeners out there.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Thank you, Hannah. And we'll see you soon.
Again, bye.
Bye. Wrapping up today's episode, remember, you don't have to face change alone.
If you'd like to connect or learn more about working with us individually, reach out to us through our Instagram account at @thestretchzone_podcast or find our emails in the footnotes to this episode. We're here to support you on your journey, each in your own way.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Stretch Zone. If today's discussion resonated with you, remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with anyone who might benefit. Until next time, keep stretching beyond your comfort zone.